Big story from the weekend was Christopher Luxon on Q&A. It was an abysmal conversation, meaning his performance was abysmal. I've got, like I said, I've got up to 8 clips. I'm only planning on talking about 3 of them, but if we get close to the time, we can do another one. I've actually got them ordered. This is the next best one, and we'll go from there. But yeah, the CEO speak when Jack Tame says things that aren't very good, and he goes, "Isn't it great?" It's the salesman. It's the salesman who is trying to sell the third most favourite bottle of drink. Everyone likes Coke first and Pepsi second, and he's got brand Baldy Locks as third. That's the third most popular sports drink, and he's trying to go, it's so much better. And that's what the sales pitch is. That's what the CEO talk is. So this first conversation is the surplus, right? And grateful to Jack to follow our lead and holding him accountable to the standard he set for the opposition. Remember, what we do here at the very least is we hold this government to the standard they set for the last lot and for the standard they set for themselves. So set for themselves are things like what they promised in Dunedin Hospital. Expected of the other guys, surplus is a good example. Let's get to Jack.
Surplus. So you absolutely hammered the previous government for pushing back the surplus track. I dug out a press release from when you were in opposition. Quote, Grant Robertson's credibility problem. New Zealand will experience another year of deficits because Labour is failing to deliver the economic growth New Zealand needs.
There's also quite a lot of him trying to interrupt Jack and not allow Jack to ask a question. It's interesting.
Now, you've already pushed back your surplus track by 1 year from your pre-election promise. Are you still committed to returning the books to surplus in 2027, 2028?
Well, we have to fix the books. There's no doubt about that. That's what we're doing. We're doing that.
And if you haven't seen this, don't expect a single answer out of his mouth in the full half hour, as you just saw. Are you going to do it? Well, I'll tell you a story.
Like for those of you at home, get a piece of pen and paper out and you can track questions not answered, corporate speak, weird shit with his tongue.
And
like all of those are trackable.
And he uses the word tamariki, and it felt so strongly weird. It was like, that's the first time in the history of the word he's ever used that. Why the hell did he pull it out now when he never uses Māori word by choice? Happened to be talking about the poor, so I don't know. It was really weird coming out of his mouth. Really weird.
I see what that is.
Yeah. Yes. We'll keep going.
Way, we're making sure that we get reprioritised savings deployed to the front line. We give people tax relief. Working New Zealanders have benefited from that, which is fantastic. And we've obviously got to create the conditions for investment and for future growth.
That's nice. That's not my question.
Yeah,
but my question was, are you still committed to returning the books to surplus in 2027, 2028?
We are committed to getting to surplus, but we're going to get a revised forecast very shortly, as you know.
That sounds like a no.
Well, no, we're going to get a revised forecast. And in fairness, I can't comment on what that forecast will be, given Haifu happens just before Christmas.
If it was a credibility problem for Grant Robertson, why is it not a credibility problem?
Well, I'd just say it was a credibility problem because for 6 years in a row, he overspent his operating allowance by 600.
It's funny how they're not talking about borrowing, how for 6 years in a row, other than COVID, Nicola Willis has borrowed more this time around than those guys who were terrible at it did. It's funny, they don't bring that one up quite. You might have missed a bit there, Jack, but, you know. So basically Jack gets him and says, if you call that incompetence, why isn't this incompetence? And of course, CEO speak, no, because our product's different. We have different reasons for why we've done it and versus why they did it.
$1 million on average.
And why is it not a credibility problem for you? If you promised originally that you were going to get us back to surplus next year, 2025, 2026, then you pushed it back a year, and it sounds like you might be pushing it back one more year. So if it's a credibility problem for him, why is it not a credibility problem for the economic manager?
We are working our way through and doing the right things. We are making sure we've got good, disciplined government spending.
But just putting it out, you're realising this is not an answer. Why is it not a credibility problem for you? Not the answer he's giving. You'll get sick of me after the 15th time I say it and on the second question, but, just making it clear.
We're making sure that we've got inflation now within the band, first time in 3.5 years. You've had 3 interest rate cuts in 12 months. That's fantastic. You've got rising confidence at annual highs, right? In the last 3 years, consumer
question of credibility.
Now we see growth. That's what we've got to do.
We're not seeing growth.
We're actually,
again, you can't point to any growth
Jack,
forecast
it's
that's
somewhat
improved.
naive, to be honest with you, to say, look, we had 6 years of economic mismanagement, and in 12 months we're supposed to fix that all.
Well, it's somewhat
And
naive to say that the previous government had a credibility problem because they pushed the surplus track back.
6 years in government.
When you're doing exactly the same thing.
We've had 12 months.
So,
But also remember what Jack is doing. Don't let Luxon get away with this, whānau. What Jack is doing is saying, no, this is what you said, right? It's like I'm not putting these targets on you. These are the targets you put on yourself that would be back in surplus by next year. So actually, you're now saying, well, who would expect that to happen? It's like, well, you did. You put those numbers out there. No one else did.
They're just that good. National is innately so good at numbers that was just assumed that they would be able to turn this around. They're going to give it to us with absolutely no context. Like, yeah, cool. Mention how long Labor's in. Fantastic. What happened while Labor was in? Yeah, we're not talking about COVID anymore, are we?
No. What's COVID?
We can't mention COVID because then that leads to shit. Labor did a pretty bang up job there. Kept everybody in work, kept everybody's mortgage paid and the rent paid, food on the table. Everything a government should do. We cannot mention that. We cannot mention it. We're just going to say that Grant Robertson shit at what he does, which is objectively not true, and then draw focus away the fact that they are tanking every metric in this country at a rate not seen since Ruth Richardson went, hold my beer, let's see what I can do with the economy.
I haven't heard hold my beer for a very long time. Chris says that we'll just cut this in. T-shirt idea, Jack Tame's face with, that's nice, but that wasn't my question. Actually, a really good idea, Chris. It's a really good idea for a T-shirt. We'll talk. Emily, you watching? No, we'll talk about that. All right, let's go to the next clip. In fact, I've already decided we're going to do 4 clips because one that we left out, Jack was talking, referencing something he had said, and I just realised when I heard him reference what he had just said, I'm like, yeah, we should play that. So let's keep moving, shall we? This one is talking about the poor. Are the poor better off now than they were? And he's talking relatively. Are they relatively better off now? So in other words, have you made life better for the poor relative to what the non-poor, the affluent, have had their lives made better under you guys?
So relative to the rest of the population, are the poorest people in New Zealand better or worse off today than when you took power?
They are getting better off under a national under our government.
No, Are they better off relative to the rest of the population?
Are they?
They are better off than they were 12 months ago because
Relative to the rest of the population.
Food price inflation
Sorry,
is down.
Prime Minister, the question is
Rents are
relative to the...
So there's the CEO speak. Rents are down, So he just powers on. This is the salesman coming out. This is the sales job. Well, he asks him to that. He always does.
rest of the population, are the poorest people in New Zealand better off than when you took power?
I'd say the poorest people, all New Zealanders, are doing better under this government than they were 12 months ago.
Of course, that's not the question I asked. The question is relative to the rest of the population.
Well, I think there's been, I think that we've got challenges about making sure we get people off welfare into work and into proper jobs and high-paying jobs.
Still not an answer, though, is it? Sorry, that's still not an answer. The question is relative to the rest of the population, are they better or worse off?
I don't know, but I presume it's no change. I would say to you that
there has been a change. So the very latest data we have is from the 2023-24 New Zealand Health Survey, published this week. It shows that in the months leading up to the end of July, compared to last year, the number of kids who live in households where food runs out has increased from about 1 in 5 to more than 1 in 5.
The thing as well is, even though Jack just, stopped punching him, he's already dead, he gives him the opportunity to answer. Can you show us how you've done this? Can you tell me policies where you have done this? This is not an unfair interview. This is an interview from someone looking for answers and a person doing everything they can not to answer them. So I don't know how this has been received in social media world, but if anyone's having a crack at Jack, it's like he says to him, what metrics are you using? He says to him, tell us the policies that help. And he doesn't answer any of them at any stage. We'll keep going, eh?
4. So the poorest have got poorer by that measure.
Well, I'll just say to you, we've seen a situation where we passed a budget that actually the Treasury assessed will lift 17,000 more kids out of child poverty in the last year of Labor because of high inflation.
But that just sounds a little bit like that $42 million for doctors, doesn't it? 17,000 kids out of poverty. Yeah, but of what? Like, because the 42 million for doctors was solving 3% of the issue. So obviously one doctor is better than no doctors, but we want the issue solved properly. I want to know now, 17,000 kids out of poverty, amazing, great. We want them to be out of poverty. What's the overall issue? How much of that is actually addressing? Like, is there still 99% of others to go? Where do we go from there? Sorry, Chewy?
Roll it back a little bit.
Yep.
And he says, I believe, that they're out of poverty because of the things that they've done with inflation. Can I just see if I'm correct on that?
That's 15 seconds back.
To more than 1 in 4. So the poorest have got poorer by that measure.
Well, I'll just say to you, we've seen a situation where we passed a budget that actually the Treasury assessed will lift 17,000 more kids out of child poverty. In the last year of Labor, because of high inflation and high interest rates in a recession, 23,000 more kids were put into poverty.
So Treasury...
So it's not through any action this government has done. We've discussed this. A government has relatively little effect on inflation in this country because we're an exporter and an importer. You know, we're beholden to international inflation and those sort of factors. So if he's saying that there's more kids that have been pulled out of poverty because of inflation, it's not through direct actions of this government to lessen the effects of poverty. It's nothing that they've done to physically lift these kids up. They're just saying, oh, we're going to take credit for this thing that's happened when we were at the wheel. Aren't we good for kids? It's fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons we're going to go back to the first question, because the first question, which I wasn't going to play, but we will play now, is about the International Monetary Fund. And Jack talks to him very clearly about lower inflation is great. Every country in the world's got lower inflation today than they had. Why are you guys taking credit for it? So we will definitely go back and do that. This one's got about 90 seconds to go. We'll keep going.
They analysed that budget, and they analysed your tax cuts and tax credit initiatives. They found that the 20% of households with the lowest incomes saw their incomes increase by $13 a week. For the richest 20%, it was 3 times that.
Well, I'll just say to you, our tax relief package has been actually really successful. We've been able to deliver tax relief.
Do you see what I'm saying? Said like it's factual. This is the salesman. This is the best deodorant you'll ever wear. You know, this is going to do a better job. This is a better tasting drink than any other. It's the sales pitch. He's telling us constantly over and over again that, and someone said earlier, the emperor's got no clothes. These are the finest threads. If you can't see these threads, then you're a moron. And everyone goes, well, I can see them. Emperor's got no clothes. It's exactly what he's doing.
Our tax relief package has been actually really successful. We've been able to deliver tax relief to 94% of Kiwis, 3.5 million Kiwis.
The point is, though,
that is a good thing. Alongside the relief
the poor
that
have
we've
got
given,
poorer under your tax package.
Well, just say to you, what we've
relative to the rest of the population.
But what I'd say to you, Jack,
you're saying a lot of things to me, but you're not answering.
Well,
the
you're not
questions.
letting me actually answer, to be honest. And this is actually kind of important to actually, if you want to have a conversation about economics and the plan and what we're trying to do.
I just want to understand why
the plan
the
is
poor
working.
people in New Zealand. You can explain to us, why are the poor, under your leadership, why are the poorest people in New Zealand poorer relative to the rest of New Zealanders than they were when you took over?
I disagree. I think New Zealanders are better off than they were 12 months ago under our government. Secondly, I'd say...
Can you give me any evidence?
Yeah, this is what he says now. And this is Jack's very good. Okay, so what Jack's done is he's being fair. He's going, I've made a supposition based on the research I've got that says the poor are worse off as compared to the rest of the country. And he's about to say, okay, fine, show me that. And of course, Lux can't.
New Zealanders are better off than they were 12 months ago under our government. Secondly, I'd say...
Can you give me any evidence?
We are lifting 17...
Sorry, I keep on asking relative to the rest of the population. Can you give me any evidence, since you disagree, that the poorest New Zealanders are better off relative to where they were 12 months ago?
So completely fair. Show me. Okay, if I'm wrong, show me. Completely fair question.
We have a budget in 2024 where 17,000 more children are going to get lifted out of poverty.
Going to get.
As a function.
Going to get.
We put a lot of parents out of work, but sure, that's going to lift some kids out of poverty, I'm sure.
But going to get. So that doesn't mean yet. It doesn't mean it's happened. So it doesn't mean you can use that to say the poor are better off. Because going to get lifted out of poverty. I'll play it again.
In 2024, where 17,000 more children are going to get lifted out of poverty as a function of the decisions that our government has taken to lower the cost of living. Here's an example for you, right? we've taken costs out of businesses, farmers, landlords. You would give me a lot of grief about a landlord tax, as you would call it, in previous interviews.
I've never called it a landlord tax.
But the reality is...
Please, tell me where have I called it a landlord tax?
We've unwind interest deductibility.
Where have I called it a landlord tax?
You've talked a lot to me about landlord interest deductibility in the past, right? And that's fair enough. But what I'm just saying to you, restoring interest deductibility, dealing with the bright line, getting the tenancy laws right, we haven't had a single rent increase. It's been stable rents over the last 12 months versus $180 per week under the previous.
So
people would disagree with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know how you could make that claim that there hasn't been a single rent increase. I guess, does that mean statistically? So like other people have got a 10% decrease and you've got a 10% increase, and that makes it even? Because people in the chat right now are saying, rent's gone up for me.
Where is he getting that? Where is he getting that stat from? That must be, it must be something. We know he's not across this. We know he doesn't relate to renters or anything like that. It's not a man on the street that he's talked to. Somebody's given him a stat that says that rents haven't gone up, which is a laughable thing because that's destroyed as soon as you go out and you find someone whose rent went up.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, let's do those super chats. Do you want to get to them while I'm sort out the next clip?
Yeah,
because
sure
we don't want to leave them all to the very end, because then it'll be like a 20 pack.
So Kiwi Bird says people are sick of Luxon CEO establishment talk. 100%. It's so hollow. Jack was definitely not tame in this interview.
Hey,
destroyed.
Hey, not tame.
Carl says, anytime any politician doesn't answer the question that all journalists should say is that the answer is no, and keep repeating that answer every time they don't want to answer the question asked. I would live for that. Can we get Kieran back on as BHN MVP? I want his thoughts on being named campaign chair. I think he's a great messenger, and he can bring on you lads as well. That did spring to mind. Jack Tame is forgetting about Labour bad, though.
Oh, yeah. See, that would have been every answer. You could have just done that, Mr. Luxon.
Because why is this? Labour bad. Yeah. When Chris Luxon says New Zealanders are better off, a lot of people with conditions such as autism are having a hard time finding part-time or full-time work. Absolutely. Yeah. This is absolutely what happens when austerity kicks in, as people get cut adrift. Like the businesses just want their bottom lines to, they start trimming fat. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
This government does not care about people. And as I've said many times, as far as I'm concerned, that is the only concern that governments should have, is looking after their people. Howie V. I just see EV. He's an electric car. I am off beam with a deep gut feeling that the NACT Gov are emboldened to shock and awe because of the USA. They'll push further than ever. The greedy gloves are off and they're grabbing up hard and fast. Yep, that is something that I am concerned about as well. We have not seen this level of speed and recklessness out of any government in my memory.
Yeah.
Carl here says, Luxon, I disagree. I have alternative facts.
Yeah. Kelly,
and Luxon has concepts of a plan.
All right, we're going to keep going, because this part of the conversation, I think, is one of the most important, if not the most important, because we're talking about the Treaty Principles Bill. And we here have been saying for a very long time that Christopher Luxon has to own the Treaties Principle Bill. Even if it was penned by Mr. Seymour, Christopher Luxon opened the door for it to go through. And, you know, most of us would have thought, oh, well, he's basically any means to an end. I'm going to have to agree with this terrible policy that I really hate. It's a bottom line for ACT, and we just have to do it, and we're going to push it aside and get through. Turns out not the case. If you haven't seen this yet, people may have a slightly 5% different opinion on who was ultimately responsible for this bill. Once you get through this part of the conversation. It's longish, it's about 6 minutes total, but we'll go through it.
And Māori relations. So you said you wouldn't support the bill at the second reading. You've been really clear about that. You've described it as divisive.
Yep.
Did you anticipate this level of response to the bill?
Yes, because frustration.
I call bullshit. Sorry, I call bullshit. Because if you knew this was going to happen, you never would have done it. I call bullshit.
It is divisive.
Yep.
Did you anticipate this level of response to the bill?
Yes, because frustration has been building for a number of years
So
around this issue.
you
on all
knew
sides of
that we
debate.
were going to get this level of response?
There is a massive frustration in the country around this issue.
Caused by you and David Seymour. Are you aware
You
of
brought
that?
it to the table.
Are you
Brought it to
aware
the
where the
table.
frustrations come from? Are you aware?
On all sides of that debate, and a legitimate
I just
frustration.
want to say it again. There's not all sides. You and Seymour say this. There's not 14 different professional opinions based around this treaty principles bill. There's two, both sides. Don't try and make it sound like, oh, we all got our various opinions. No, there's two. There's two sides to this debate.
So you consciously made a decision to support a bill through the first reading that has contributed.
If you haven't seen this, I'm just thinking what Jack's thinking right now. Jack's going to drop the elbow off the top rope, and he knows he's going to. And I would just love to think what is going through his head right now. Is it like, how are we going to get there? What are we going to do? Is it going to come naturally? Because when it comes, honestly, that's the moment where I went, what the, out loud when I heard Luxon say what he's going to say in part of these 6 minutes.
Contributed to worsening Crown Māori relations in New Zealand?
No, that's an important topic.
Yes,
so
you
let's back up.
Can you just answer that question and then you can give us some context?
Well, what I'd say to you is that I know that this is a very divisive issue. I know that there's strong feeling and frustration on all sides of that debate.
Both
no
sides.
doubt about it.
Both sides.
That has been building for a number of years. What do you do with that frustration?
You haven't answered the question. The question is, what kind of leader makes a decision to support a bill knowing that it will contribute to worsening relations with New Zealand's Indigenous people?
What I'd say to you, Jack, is it's a leader who actually formed a government because the New Zealand people delivered an outcome through an MMP system, and we have to do compromise. And you may not like it, and I'm sure David Seymour doesn't like it because he wanted a full national referendum.
No, I'm not sure
I don't
about
like
that.
it.
Yeah.
I don't like it because I don't like the bill at all. I don't think it's
Remember, we've said this before. This is this great guru of business who is the only person I've ever heard broadcast a lose-lose compromise. Nobody likes this. They lose, they lose, they lose. I've never heard that in business before, that the result we're going to aim for is a lose-lose.
right way to deal with race relations in this country. We came to a compromise. That is quite normal in coalition governments and MMP environments, and that will continue to be normal going forward.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. I didn't get what I wanted. David Seymour didn't get what he wanted. We came to a compromise. That's the reality of it, and I've been very straight up about that. But we're not supporting it at second reading.
No, we
It doesn't
understand you're not
become law,
supporting it. You
right?
made that really clear. So, I mean, first of all, I'm not sure that David Seymour didn't get what he wanted out of all of this.
people.
He wanted a full national referendum.
Well, that's what he says. And this is the
was the
thing, like, this is what he
policy
says.
before
But
the
this is
election.
welcome to politics, Prime Minister. And the reason this is important is because it says so much about your negotiation skills, but also your character as a leader. You consciously agreed to a policy which you knew would worsen relations with Crown and iwi in New Zealand. So my question is this. As part of the coalition negotiations, did ACT make the treaty principles an absolute explicit bottom line?
It was a very difficult negotiation. It was the thing that took the longest.
Starts the question. Starts the question.
So I'm saying this for the 1% of people watching who don't know. A bottom line means that Seymour would say, if you don't do this, we are not going to go into coalition. So was it that, Mr. Luxon?
To resolve. There are strong feelings on all sides of that debate.
I understand. So
that's built up
they
on
haven't
both
answered the
sides.
question there? Can you
and
just
we came,
answer that
well, I
question?
just said to you, we came to a compromise. We found a way through.
So my question was, did ACT make it an absolute explicit bottom line for forming a government?
Well, I'm not talking about our negotiations that happened between two parties.
ACT has. I called David Seymour this week.
That's fine. But the point.
Oh.
Oh my God!
Have you seen this, Joey?
Jack Tame off the top rope with a steel fucking chair.
Do you know what he's going to say?
No.
Have you seen this?
I went
Okay.
into this blind because I knew we were going to do it.
This is my
Oh
what
my
the.
God!
So Jack Tame knows the answer to that question. He's asking the Prime Minister, was it a bottom line? Were you in a situation where Seymour said, if you don't do this, we are not forming a government with you? All right. I didn't realise you hadn't seen it, Joey. I'll sit back. You listen to what he says.
What do you
I'm
think
not.
he said?
I'm not. The point for me is that we actually came to a compromise, and that's what you expect in an MMP government and a coalition government.
So I called David Seymour. Do you want to know what he said?
Well, I've been in negotiations with David about that issue. We disagree strongly on it.
Okay, no, I know you disagree.
Yeah.
But it's the deal that you, as
That's
a
right.
seasoned negotiator, reached. So I asked David Seymour, he confirmed that ACT didn't explicitly play the bottom line card. He said that as part of the negotiations over the Treaty Principles Bill, ACT never threatened to blow things up and go back to the polls.
Look,
What the fuck?
You wet ham sandwich.
Like, so you either got played, Seymour, to take on something that was never threatened to blow up the negotiations, or I was saying this on Twitter and someone said it back to me, of course, what I thought, or this is the thing, or Luxon wants it. They're your only two possibilities. They're your only two possibilities. Luxon got played and dog walked, as Chewy keeps saying, by someone who sounds like they were going, well, we never made it a bottom line, but we wanted it. Or Luxon wanted it. Only two possibilities.
Like, let's game this out, right? So let's say they did put it on the table. This is an absolute red line. If we don't do this, we're going to sit on the crossbenches. Where are ACT going to go?
Yeah.
Are they going to go and talk to Labor and form a government? Are they going to make it hard? They have nowhere to go. This is the whole thing with this negotiating thing. When you're that far to the right of the major party, do you want to be part of the government and get something done, or fucking not? Because those are the choices. Like, we can dicker about this, but Luxon was concerned about how long it was taking. He wanted to see that he could form a government quickly because he's a good deal maker. He didn't consider any of this. That wasn't his focus. He wanted to be prime minister. He wanted to make sure that he wasn't seen as letting Winston drag it out like Winston always does. So he didn't consider all of this. And then now you've got your coalition partner picking up the phone to Jack Tame and going, oh, yeah, no, it wasn't a big deal, but we got it anyway.
That's the next question,
Holy
though, Chewy.
shit.
But that's the next question. Why on earth would David Seymour tell Jack Tame that? Think about this. Last week,
Because he's a
Seymour,
slimy little rat man.
but why? Well, Seymour last week was making sure everyone knew that there was more ACT policies going through than not. Winston last week was saying that Luxon is struggling, quote unquote struggling, which means is not qualified to do the job. This week, Seymour is telling a journalist, no, wasn't a bottom line for that. He must know that when Jack Tame was going to use it in this interview, it would not be good for Luxon. So why did he do it? What game is he playing? And just imagine, because it's getting towards the end of the interview, Luxon coming off the set, walking into the green room with his advisors. Honestly, that
seemed drywall.
Yep. Let's listen to it again because it's kind of beautiful, and then we'll get to the end of this clip.
So
Explicitly play the bottom line card. He said that as part of the negotiations over the Treaty Principles Bill, ACT never threatened to blow things up and go back to the polls.
Look, it was a major issue for ACT and for the National
Is he
Party.
being honest there?
Well, Dave, I'm just not getting into it with you, Jack. I'm not discussing conversations I have with other party leaders in a negotiation.
Even though the other party leaders are discussing those conversations with Jack Tame.
We got to a position, as I've been very upfront about, with a compromise. No one's happy about it.
But
got it.
here's
But now
thing.
the question is, what do you want to do about it?
If ACT wasn't playing the bottom line card, if they weren't threatening to blow it all up and go back to the polls, you didn't have to agree to this.
I disagree. This is a strong position from the ACT Party.
But it wasn't a bottom line. It wasn't a bottom line.
It was part of our compromise that we came to. So that's where we got to.
I understand it was
now
a
the question
compromise.
is, what do you want to do about it? And the reality is, it has caused frustration, right? And I don't think a simplistic treaty principles bill that rewrites 184 years worth of history is the way you solve that. I do believe that you take it issue by issue. There are legitimate frustrations. Look at what we've done. We disagree with the Māori Health
Yeah, look at what you've done.
Wow.
Look at what you've done.
Authority.
Awesome.
It wasn't working. It didn't deliver outcomes. There was massive bureaucracy. We didn't agree with co-governance of Three Waters. We've disbanded that. We didn't agree with actually Wellington mandated local Māori awards. We opposed it in opposition, and we've actually pushed that back to local communities. That's how you deal with the issues, by issue, case by case.
Yeah, so I'm interested in why you made the deal, right? So you, as an apparently skilled and experienced negotiator, you were prepared to support maybe the most contentious policy in recent New Zealand history, although it wasn't an explicit bottom line. And you yourself say it's divisive.
It wasn't. I didn't support the proposal,
The
Jack.
question is, Prime Minister, why you folded on something so contentious when you didn't have to?
We didn't fold. We compromised, and we found a way through for both parties.
If you didn't push him to an absolute bottom line, that means you folded.
Yeah, I would just say to you, Jack, you weren't there. I understand what we did in the negotiations. I'm proud of the negotiations and the way we went about it.
CEO talk. I'm proud. Everything was perfect. It was a perfect phone call, but it's a CEO talk. No, we did well. Everybody won. Yes, that little company's just taken over our big company, but everyone won in the end when you actually got your nose firmly stuck up the arsehole of the other CEO of the smaller company. CEO talk. Chewy, sorry, you're going to say something?
Yeah, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that you're proud of the negotiations and you did a good job, and then you're not proud of the fucking outcome.
Yep.
And the outcome is something you have acknowledged as being divisive and harmful for New Zealand society in a way we haven't seen for decades.
Yep.
You can't say that you did a good job and that's the result that you got.
Yep. All right.
You own this.
Yep.
You own what you've done. You should be crucified for this.
60 seconds.
I understand what we did in the negotiations. I'm proud of the negotiations and the way we went about it. If you think about it, a lot of skeptics and a lot of media commentators and pundits would be saying this doesn't look very stable with three leaders coming together a year
And they were proven correct.
ago. It's proved to be a very coherent and stable government.
Yeah, except that you've just said that Crown-Iwi relations are worse than when you took over.
Sure,
We've had the largest protests in New Zealand
Well, I
history.
just also say to you, though, but that they built on both sides of that debate in the under previous Labor administration. We now have...
Well, I
Blame Labor. Got it out there. You got it out there, team. Woohoo! We should have like a little buzzer when he says blame Labor.
have you an opportunity to tell us what you've done to improve things.
I just
with that.
I mean, but I just want to make sure you understand our position.
I understand. I think everyone understands your position.
No, you don't, because I think the outcomes...
Do you regret agreeing to it?
No, it's the reality of MMP environment, and you have to be pragmatic and you have to have compromises. Otherwise, governments don't get formed. And that is the same if you think about a Labour, Te Pāti Māori, Greens coalition. Are you seriously going to have a separate parliament, a separate education system, separate justice system?
Boogeyman, blame the left for everything now. Be scared of the left.
Well, one might expect that
There'll be a whole bunch
if
of
the largest
issues on that
party
side of
was
that
to find itself in those negotiations, that at the very least they would push their coalition partners right to a bottom line.
And what
point.
was great is that we in those coalition
What was great? This is great. This is great.
agreements...
Didn't push them to a bottom line?
No, but we got massive alignment on the things that all three parties were aligned around. The economy,
So
law and order, public services.
Chewy, I deliver you a gift. We've got one more clip we're going to watch, but you can have a
This
go.
man got absolutely fucking bodied. Like, I mean, a little bit of hyperbole of Jack Tame off the top rope with the steel chair, but he just kept on hitting him with the steel chair. I am so glad to see him pinned to the wall on you cannot say that this was a good negotiation when I have talked to the other party and they said it wasn't a big deal. And you're sitting there going, oh, it was such a tough negotiation, but we got there in the end. And then you want to say it was such a good negotiation, but it's somehow MMP and Labour's fault that Māori are unhappy. And then, as you said, having to drag out the boogeyman that somehow Labour is going to have to agree to Te Pāti Māori setting up a separate parliament, which is just pie in the sky stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, if you have, like, where was ACT going to go? Hey, Luxon, we want a full referendum. No, you can't have a full referendum. That's crazy. Okay, we want to do a bill. We want to do a bill, and you have to support it. Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, okay. Well, we're prepared for ice cream lunches on Thursdays. You know, you just say no. You just say no, or you go, David, that's fucking crazy. We'll have riots in the streets. Pick something sensible. I want the New Zealand flag changed to the same colour as my tie. Okay, that's something that we'll get more support for.
Like, get behind a pink one. Yep.
Get behind a pink New Zealand flag. That's fine. Like, You just say no, and then you move on to something else. There is something else that you want, David. I am not giving you that. Bottom line, we'll sit here for a week. I'm not budging because this is going to ruin my legacy and it's going to ruin my chance of getting a knighthood, which is the whole reason I'm here. Stop fucking me around, David.
Cougar Nick just says, shame, Game of Thrones, as he walks naked through the town. Oh, there's another t-shirt. Sorry. Peter Syme, hopefully you got your t-shirt today, Peter, by the way. Hopefully you got that delivered. I do believe that Luxon's remaining credibility, not that he had much the day before, collapsed entirely. Now, Chewy, I don't know about this, about you starring your own comment and then having it to put out there. I'm not sure if that's appropriate.
I just put it there to remind myself because I saw different versions of this in the chat, and this is just so good. This is a hashtag. If it's not doing the rounds, we need to make it do the rounds.
All right. What I would say to you, what I would say to you is, Rando, show us, show us on the doll where Jack Tame hurt you, Chris. That's very, very funny.
In the head. And in the heart and the bottom.
And Mr. Arvids for the Foo Fund. All right, guys, we're going to do one more. And I said if we had time, we would. And I actually think this is really important because this is talking to Christopher Luxon's credibility when it comes to his economic claims. International Monetary Fund is where they start. Where do they rate us in the world? And the thing that's great about this, and we've talked about this, is if businesses, business people, big business boys, were confident about the future under this government, they wouldn't be leaving our shores in record numbers. So that's nothing to do with the past. That's to do with the future. If tradies were confident that another boom was coming under this government, then they wouldn't be going to Australia. And Jack Tame picks up on that and talks a bit more about the International Monetary Fund and what they think of us at the moment under national.
I think it's all about jobs.
It's all about growth, and you've said that growth and productivity is the key to our economic prosperity. So the International Monetary Fund records GDP growth data for 190 countries. According to the latest figures, where just roughly would you expect New Zealand to sit?
I mean, we've been flat to negative, actually, for the last 3 years, essentially. And that is a function of high interest rates because of high inflation, because of poor financial management.
So where would you expect us to sit? 190 countries, just roughly?
I wouldn't know, but I would just say to you, I know where we are, which is that it's negative and flat.
So currently, according to the International Monetary Fund, out of 190 countries, New Zealand is 179th. Not just lower growth than Australia, Canada, France, Singapore, those countries we compare ourselves to, but lower growth.
Growth, right? Future, what we're doing now, growth. Not debt from the past or whatever other word, growth. Projections.
And Guinea-Bissau, Suriname, Chad, lower growth than Iraq under Prime Minister Christopher Luxon.
Sheesh.
Why is that?
Well, look, again, what I'd just say to you is we've kind of forgotten the immutable laws of economics, I'd say, that we learned 35 years ago. And we've taken good
We've forgotten them, or one could say some of you never learnt them, Mr. Luxon.
economic management for granted. When you go spend 84% increase in spending, when you drive up inflation domestically, you have to then take interest rates up. When you take interest rates, you put the economy into recession, and when the economy is in recession, it leads to unemployment. And that's why we've always said, if you actually care about working New Zealanders, you actually are fiscal conservatives. You actually run the economy well, because the pain is ultimate unemployment. And that's what we've actually been seeing, Jack, the last 3 to 6 months, is the lag effect of that. If you're a business that's hung in there with high inflation, high interest rates, suppressed demand, the last thing you're left with is actually laying workers off, and we've seen some of that this year. So that's why we've got to get, we're working our way through those 5 components, but you've got to work through them sequentially so that you get the show going.
So which countries didn't experience an inflation spike during COVID?
Well, yeah, this is also very good. And what we've been saying for 2 years, it's been a stick to beat Labor with about, inflation and extra spending, like every country in the world. Yes, we did have a bit of a longer tail than some, but there's a couple of reasons for that. One is we don't have the economy that, say, USA does, right? And 2 is that we chose to take on a bit more debt to keep more New Zealanders alive. So I'm okay with that payoff. So what countries didn't? The answer is, well, none. And finally, we get someone like Jack Tame asking someone like Christopher Luxon about that.
So that you get the show going.
So which countries didn't experience an inflation spike during COVID?
Well, ours was longer because we kept printing
that wasn't
cash.
my question. My question was which countries didn't?
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, what I'm
I think
focused on is New
basically
Zealand.
all countries on Earth.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Hang on. hang on. How can you be the Prime Minister of a country, be in charge of an economy, be the party of business and economy, and not have a clue what's going on in the rest of the world economically? Like, how can you actually say which countries didn't have a spike? I don't know. Like, how is that acceptable?
Which countries didn't?
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean,
I'm not sure. Like, all of the Western countries did. I know that. I know that, Chewy. How can I know that? And the Prime Minister, who is the economic whiz kid and the dealer of deals, not know that?
Oh, what was that Baltic country that he wanted us to be like?
Was it Georgia? No.
It wasn't Georgia. There's awesome stuff happening in Georgia, but it's not that. Was it Lithuania?
Don't think so. Can't remember.
Something
Anyway.
like that. But there would be the easy comparison. And I wish Jack would pull this out of his little bag of tricks.
Estonia.
Estonia, yes. Yeah, bring out that comparison. How did Estonia do during COVID? How's Estonia doing now? You wanted us to be like Estonia. Are we like Estonia? That would be a great question. I don't have the answer to that, but that would be one to talk about. But he's adrift here. This is the sign of a prime minister that is very surface level. He is not across his numbers. He is not ready to go into this interview. This is why they've kept him away from Jack all year. This is dreadful.
Yeah. And just so you know, we've done it a bit of the flipped around. This was the first series of questions. I know we've played it in a different order to you, but this was the start of the interview with him. Let's keep going.
Well,
I think basically all countries on Earth.
Yeah,
right?
all
countries on Earth had inflation. All developed economies are bringing inflation down now, but for some reason New Zealand's 179th out of 190, worse than we were 12 months ago.
Yeah, and that's why we're working so hard, Jack, to make sure that we actually deal with the cost of living through getting inflation and interest rates right.
CEO talk. So now he's going to sell. Now he's selling the product. That's why this roll deodorant is better than the opposition. And once we get to Q3, you'll see the sales increase and everything will be fine. CEO speak.
That's why
everyone is working incredibly hard to deliver outcomes for everyday New Zealanders. That is a phrase that means fucking nothing and cannot be measured.
Yeah. All right.
So hard, Jack, to make sure that we actually deal with the cost of living through getting inflation and interest rates right. Now that means confidence is building. That confidence has to translate into economic growth. You've got forecasts, I think, from the RBNZ I saw this week suggesting that we might be growing 2 to 2.4% next year. That's good. It's a start. It's better than where we've been, which is flat to negative growth.
So you blame the previous government on the situation in New Zealand.
But now we own it, and now we're working hard in 12 months, and we've been working really hard to actually make sure we put disciplined spending in place.
Yeah.
That has been a key compartner to monetary policy to get inflation back down.
Just let me ask a question here. So I appreciate the political convenience of blaming the last government.
Well, it's not really. It's just the reality.
Well, we're in December 2024. Like I say, inflation's coming around in basically every comparable economy in the world. I think everyone would appreciate that a bit of an impact on growth at the start of your parliamentary term might be understandable. But the curious thing is that the forecasts around growth have continued to worsen. So take this week's monetary policy statement. The forecasts are for even slower economic growth than the monetary policy statement was forecasting in August, when you'd already been in the job for 9 months. So why do the forecasts keep getting worse under your government?
I would just say to you, Jack, I think all New Zealanders know it's been a pretty tough time. We've inherited a hell of a mess. And I think what you've seen in 12 months...
Including the economists, right? So the economists, the Reserve Bank, the Treasury, for example, all of your staff, they know exactly the kind of fiscal situation you inherited. And yet, while you've been in government, the forecasts have been worse. So look at that NPS in August. They gave us growth forecasts. And in the time since August, those forecasts have gotten worse under your leadership.
Yep.
And again, so why is that?
Well, again, what I'm saying is you have to take your...
Just remember, forecasts, what's to come. So your policies, Mr. Luxon, that you're putting in today, the things that you're shaping the future with, the experts are saying that what you're putting in place is not going to do that. The forecast, what's to come, is slower.
Forecasts have gotten worse under your leadership.
And
so why is that?
Well, again, what I'm saying is you have to take your medicine. You actually have to work through the economy, and that's what we're doing. You get spending under control as we've been doing. We haven't thrown the economy into austerity. We've got a very balanced approach to that.
You're not answering my question. My question is, why does it get worse under your government?
Because you actually have to work your way sequentially through spending, inflation, interest rates, growth.
But all of the economists appreciate that, and yet for some reason the forecasts keep getting worse.
Well, the forecasts are forecasts. The reality is we get to change those forecasts if we do the right things. That's what we want to do as a government. Right?
Forecasts are forecasts. You said, quote, our job is to make sure we do better than the forecast.
That's right.
What you said in the lead up to last year's election. So can you point to any medium-term GDP growth forecast that has improved during your time in charge?
No, what I'd say to you, we still acknowledge we've got tough times. The forecasts around economic growth will be a consequence of the decisions we make around spending, inflation and interest rates.
Just to get an answer on that question, though, can you point to any medium-term GDP growth forecast that has improved under your leadership?
Our forecasts are really challenged and they have deteriorated.
So just to be totally clear on that question, though, can you point to any medium-term GDP growth forecast that's improved under your leadership?
Not from memory that I can see, but what I can tell you, Jack, is...
You can't?
No, but what I want you to be really clear about is it's all very well, but you had 6 years of economic mismanagement.
You're the CEO. You're the guy with a 100-day plan. You're the guy who said we're going to turn the economy around. And the truth is,
and isn't it great?
That under your leadership, the forecasts have continued to deteriorate.
Isn't it great?
This is what I was talking about. We'll go back. Here's a really good example of the CEO talk. Listen to what Jack's saying. Jack's basically saying, you're the guys that are supposed to fix this. And he's going, isn't it great? But Jack's going, but it's not being fixed. And isn't it great? This is the perfect example of CEO talk.
I can tell you, Jack.
You can't.
No, but what I want you to be really clear about is it's all very well, but you had 6 years of economic mismanagement.
You're the CEO. You're the guy with a 100-day plan. You're the guy who said we're going to turn the economy around. And the truth is,
and isn't it great?
That under your leadership, the forecasts have continued to deteriorate.
But isn't it great that we've actually lowered inflation, food inflation?
Well, I mean, like I said, every comparable country in the world has lowered inflation.
Rates coming down in the way that we have after, 12 rate rises, we've got 3 rate cuts.
Wasn't it great that the previous government was bringing down inflation as well? Wasn't it great that every single comparable economy around the world...
If you carried on spending as the previous government did, you wouldn't have seen inflation or interest rates come down this year.
Hey, Pat.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Guess what else has come down this year? Guess what else? This is new news.
Yeah.
This is new news. Our credit rating, our country's credit rating has come down as well. We're no longer AAA+.
So when we were under COVID and those reds under the bed that couldn't do anything, we had a better credit rating than when we were under the party of business who know how to fix things, who have got worse outcomes projecting forward, who have got worse forecasts projecting forward than the last lot of, quote unquote, from Mr. Luxon, economic vandals had. Yeah?
Yeah, that's great. But look, I have full confidence that our finance minister will get us back on track because she's got the qualifications to really get us there. Oh, hang on. Fuck. No, she doesn't. We're doomed. We're doomed. We're doomed. We don't need ferries. We need lifeboats because this government plans to sink us completely. We're led by a buffoon that is not across this stuff. He has nothing but buzzwords. Isn't that great?
Isn't it great?
I'm going to hold my tongue in a weird way while I try and think about something. I'm Christopher Luxon. Look at my tongue. Like, it's just weird. You go into probably the show that you know you're going to get a grilling, right? Luxon should have been in a boot camp surrounded by all of his media advisors, everyone with all the polling. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. He's definitely going to hit you with this. We've got to know the answer. It's like he just walked in off the street.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Unprovable statistic. Optimistic outcome. Buzzword. Patronizing comment to Jack. This guy is a disaster. Absolute disaster. And I think I hope, Centre New Zealand, this is what you voted for. Did you know him well enough? Did you think that this was going to happen? Or was it just because you were itchy? Your bed sheets were itchy and you wanted a change. This is what happens when you don't do the research. Okay, and I get it. Not everybody wants to be a political tragic like us. But we come back time and time again. Like even his comment of, I think we've forgotten some lessons from 35 years ago. I think that's really on the nose. 35 years ago was 1989. That was David Longie's Labour government. Obviously, they got voted out in a landslide because the whole country was on the ropes. And that's when we got Bulger's national government. And that's where we got Ruth Richardson from. And that's when we got the wholesale selling off of assets. Thousands and thousands of people losing their jobs. The economy tanking. Hotlines set up to Dobbin beneficiaries. That's what these guys are trying to emulate. Yeah, 7 people are trying to make this guy fucking relatable.